The hospital in Combe Valley Road was formerly the workhouse for the Buckland part of Dover. The hospital always had a reputation for being haunted, especially the male medical ward on the top floor, which was the children's area in the former workhouse. Bill Ridgway, the then Deputy Mayor of Dover, had an encounter when he was a patient recovering from a heart attack in the medical ward on the top floor. One evening late in 1973, he was surprised to see the figure of a lad on a peculiar sort of trolley, rather like an old-fashioned bobcart, rolling along the floor of the ward. Apparently, another patient had seen the same figure in the same place. The ward in question was always very creepy. There seemed to have darker shadows in the shadows, and other shadows flitting only ever seen with the corner of the eye. The night staff used the treatment room to get a couple of hours sleep on their break at night. On one occasion, a friend working there was awoken by children around him, who then vanished before his eyes. Even when nothing could be seen, one was always aware that the place had an atmosphere, and that one was being watched. It really was very creepy at times. In another area of the hospital, down on the ground floor outside the theatres, a corridor was used as the parking area for theatre trolleys. The trolleys would be neatly parked up at the end of the day, out of the way and ready for use the following morning. Sometimes, even within minutes, the porter would return to find that the trolleys had been rearranged, even though no one would be in that part of the building at that time of night. I worked there in the late 1980s on nights in the male surgical ward for about 18 months before handing in my notice and leaving for an undergraduate degree at York University. The ward was a typical Nightingale ward with a small wing at the far end that branched off to the right. The organisation of the ward was that the sicker patients, those recently back from theatre or those very ill and awaiting their operation, were placed close to the nurse's office, whilst those whose condition was stable and recuperating were placed further away. The small wing was used for those being discharged in the immediate future. Anyway, on with the tale. One night in early 1989, I was doing my rounds at about 2 a.m. to see that all was well, and I had reached the end of the ward and entered the wing, where I saw that a chap who was going home in the morning was wide awake and reading. I asked him if he wanted a cuppa, that's standard nursing practice, whereupon he replied that it was okay, as the nurse who I had just missed was going to make him one. A little perplexed by this answer, as I was the only one there at the time, I then asked him the what, where and why questions about the nurse that he'd seen. I was wondering why no one had come up the ward to the nurse's office. He then told me that a nurse in a grey uniform with long sleeves, a white apron and a hat had just a few minutes before walked into the wing and asked him if he was all right and did he want some tea. When he said yes please, she had smiled, turned around and walked back the way she had come, in the direction of the back stairs to the ward. These were not really used at my time as they were very rickety, but she had apparently gone through the doorway and descended to the floor below. The uniform that he described to me was clearly of a very old-fashioned type, perhaps even of the early years of the 20th century. It was certainly not something that would be worn at the time that I'd employed there. No one else saw the figure, and of course, she never returned with the tea.